You know, we're supposed to be doing a show here, and yet every week, Basil Budakat of Basil Budakat Presents, ! Wants me to, well, he's not going to call in. If he's not going to call in, then forget. Oh, there you go.
Says someone is trying to call you.
Hold on.
Kitty says hurry up and answer.
Yeah, okay, yep, okay, I'm going to do it. Okay, Basil Budakat would like you to know that, and it's something to crawl up on the screen. Basil Budakat Presents! Wants me to put a word in for a show because as he explains it, even though I've been on the show, Progressive Soup's been on the show for 8 years, and Basil's only been on for 5 years, but somehow or other, Basil claims he got me this gig. There, are you happy? Said. Now I have to translate it because you guys don't speak cat, probably. Not even you guys here in the cafe with us. He said, yep. Okay. And with that, welcome to Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. And with me I have Chris Pante, who has his own show on Comcast. And I've been told by a very illustrious gentleman named Mike Fager that Chris Pante has the best show on cable television. And I don't watch television. I don't watch my own shows because it's there, so I don't need to watch it. I don't watch any television. But I want to hear about some of the shows you've done. Now, you've been on the air for a total of 5 or 6 years now?
I've done about 6 years total. Al Broomer brought me on to U.S. TV Talk. I bet you it was probably 09 or 010.
Okay.
And then I've done my own show for, I think this is my 4th year.
Now, a lot of your shows, as I've come to understand, a lot of your shows are just you. Solo shows where you spend an entire hour. Now, are you taking calls during that hour, or are you just expounding on various issues?
Well, you know, it's funny because I much rather have someone interview and talk about, you know, what they're interested in. But I've done shows where we're live for 60 minutes and you're taking calls, and I'll pick a topic, whether it's politics, whether it's Bible prophecy. I love doing shows on Bible prophecy, other news and sports. I'm able to do it, and I give myself an outline, and off I go.
So you've got a pretty good working knowledge on a lot of different things. That's interesting. That's jack of all trades, master of none, or at least jack of all trades. You might be a master of all trades too, but you're at the very least you've got a good working knowledge of all these different subject matters.
Well, you know what it is? It's that you find out that what affects people the most, everyday people, is probably what they're going to be the most opinionated and emotional about. And when you have shows that hit a nerve, those are the best kind of shows. I mean, like President Trump is a lightning rod. Hillary Clinton was a lightning rod. And so if you just put something up there, like we did a show a month ago on President Trump's first 40 days. And, you know, people called in and pro and con, and they gave us their views because they're emotional about it because it means something to them. If I pick subjects that didn't mean anything to everyday people, and I would be sitting here and I wouldn't even believe it myself what I was saying.
But by the same token, I sat in and watched your show that you just did prior to taping this show, and you had some yoga folks on, some folks that do yoga. And yet that could be something that could be kind of blasé, but they and you turned it into something pretty interesting.
Well, it's very nice for you to say that, and I think the key, the reason why I always wanted to have a yoga person on, was simply because more and more people were turning to that type of exercise. Like when we were up and coming, people jogged, people lifted, and they called it a day. And then men and women began to do the both. But then both men and women began to try like step class and spinning and Pilates. Like they were getting kind of tired of the same old. And I found that this Bikram yoga, which is done in 109-degree heat, I mean, that's like, why? And people do it for 90 minutes. And I'm like, you know what? I need to do a show on that because I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, my daughter teaches yoga, and Bikram is the I don't know a lot about it. I've been in a couple classes with her, as I've come to understand, it involves a lot of stretching. But beyond that, I'm not really too knowledgeable about it. But yeah, it was interesting to watch your folks, and you gave them an opportunity, really, to take the stage and do the show. And you did very similar to what I like to do. You asked like follow-up questions, just things that your viewing audience might be asking, and certainly your call-ins might be asking too.
Right. Here's the thing. We're going to try to educate in this area, but probably the normal guy or girl that's watching this show probably has an entry-level knowledge of yoga.
Yeah.
So it was more important to say, hey, this is going on, this is what it is, and we're going to show you what you have to do to execute the moves and the benefits that come. So we try to keep it very basic, and I thought they did a great job.
Yeah, definitely. It was very intriguing and interesting, and they brought out a lot of things, a lot of information to fit into an hour show, certainly.
Yeah, we did about 40 minutes of information, of interview, and then we did about 15 minutes of poses, and then we just kind of wrapped it up. And it was a nice way to break it up. The students, to me, were amazing how limber they are. Anybody who does this kind of stuff in yoga, it's amazing what the body, if you train it right, what it will do. And there's some health benefits to this because it's, enacts the activity of the spine and blood flow. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. And it's not political, which is also pretty good.
Well, it was a sidebar for me. I did this show, and we're going to, the next couple of weeks, we're going to have some authors on. We're going to have the mayor on in 2 weeks, so the mayor's going to be on. So it's kind of cool that you can, with your own show, you're producing it, you decide the content.
Absolutely.
And, thanks so much to Mike Fager and his wife, Chris, that give their time to put it on the air.
Definitely, yeah. They're a good couple, and I've had some good producers over the 8 years. I have to say that it pretty clearly, without a doubt, he's the best of the bunch, and he's a taskmaster. He'll come in here and he'll drill my guests on how to sit,
right,
to turn their head rather than their entire body. Because his name is on the show, and he's been doing this. He does a lot of shows. He does Marty Heiser's show. He does a lot of shows. I think he says he does more shows certainly on this station than anybody else, and so he's got that week-to-week knowledge of how to do it properly.
Absolutely, knows how to direct the show.
So enough about Marty. Enough about Mike Fager.
Right.
More about the Chris Pante Show.
Okay. Well, like I said, it's on its best day, it's interview based, and on its day that I haven't come up with an interview, it's going to be political in nature. There's going to be points of view, things that are going on in sports. From subjects that relate to professional sports to the teams themselves, we could do. I love shedding light. My favorite thing to do is to shed light on someone's accomplishment when they don't think it's that big of a deal. And I'm going to give you a very specific example.
Okay.
There's a girl I grew up with. Her name was Dina Ragona. Her name is now Dina Prestoris. And she has run the New York City Marathon 4 times. Okay? And she lived in my neighborhood. We grew up together. Isn't that amazing?
That's something to aspire to be able. I guess maybe the Boston Marathon is supposedly a little harder because you've got Heartbreak Hill.
Right.
But the New York Marathon is probably more people than the Boston Marathon. So you're just in this incredible mass of humanity, and how they manage to go without somebody stepping on somebody else's foot or people tripping and whatnot, just amazing.
It is fantastic. And so I catch up with her, and we are getting reacquainted, and she tells me what she's up to. And I'm like, come on the show and talk about it, and she did. And to her, I was like, well, why is this a big deal? I said, because at our age, we get tired driving 26 miles. Okay?
Yeah.
And she's running 26 miles in a 6-hour time frame. And to me, that was amazing. So we had her on, and we talked about it. And to me, that's my show on its best day.
So the things that your guests might think are kind of humdrum, maybe, to people that are watching that will watch, and they'll say to themselves, wow, I could never do that myself. So let me find out something about it from someone that actually does it.
Right. The material is right in front of you. Your show guests are right in front of you. You don't have to go very far.
No.
You know, and especially it's a public access show. It goes into Danbury, Bethel, and Ridgefield.
Yep.
So if I find people who live in those towns and that, you know, their loved ones can watch the show, call in on the show.
Yep.
I love, you know, and that's what they'll say, well, why is this a big deal? Because I said it was a big deal, and I think it's a big deal. Now, you may not want to come on the show, but it's newsworthy what you do.
Yeah.
And that's what I love doing.
And something else that is worthy of noting is it's commercial free.
Right.
You don't have to. You're not going to have a 10 minutes of commercials in a half hour or 20 minutes of commercials in an hour show that break your span, break your attention away from the point at hand. And I don't see why everybody can't do. I'm sure everybody could do a half hour or an hour show and do it straight on through and keep the flow of the conversation going. But I guess in our commercialized world today, where it used to be, you grew up sort of the same time frame as me, and a show, let's say, I'll pick one, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, half-hour show. You could watch it back then, and back then, a half-hour show had maybe 5 minutes of commercial at most. So I've been watching for years all these reruns of Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and it never quite made sense. Now I can watch it on YouTube or on Hulu or one of the other vehicles for watching them, and I'm saying, wait a second now. That wasn't, I don't remember that being part of the show. That's because it had to be edited out for a commercial.
Right.
So you're actually getting the actual full show from 50, 60 years ago that makes a lot more sense than the sliced and diced version that you've been getting. We've been getting all these years as commercials take up more and more of airtime, leaving less and less time for the actual show.
The issue when you're doing public access is that you can talk about anything you want. And I did one show on MD-directed healthcare versus other types of healthcare, and the monopoly that the MDs have. Most insurances only cover visits to see an MD, but healing takes place with a naturopath. It takes place with a chiropractor. It can take place in yoga. And the issue is if you're Fox or CNN and one of your sponsors is a pharmaceutical company,
they're not going to let you.
Guess what you're not going to be able to do? So essentially, you have an opportunity to drop some truth and knowledge through a public access camera that you can't on any other type of television.
Try to criticize General Electric on NBC.
Exactly. You know, so people talk about
who owns NBC.
To me, it's a soft coup. It's soft fascism when truth is being suppressed by corporations. And let's face it, whether you're watching a ball game and it's going to be alcohol, or if you're watching news programs that are going to be pharmaceuticals, you're never going to get the truth of what is going down. So if I learn something during the week, or a doctor that healed A, B, C, or D, I can sit there and just talk about it. That's what's probably not only good about my show, it's good about your show and anybody who has a show.
Absolutely, and we don't have to have I've been to Yankee Stadium about once a year. I have an attorney friend I'm a realtor, I have an attorney friend who gives me a couple of seats at Yankee Stadium once or twice a year. And I love the ballpark.
Right.
I love the new Yankee Stadium is really basically just like the old Yankee Stadium. It's a very attractive ballpark. But Johnny Walker, every time there's a walk, Johnny Walker's there traipsing around the perimeter, and it's just a glare of advertising.
It's horrible.
You can't get away from it. It's disgusting.
It's horrible.
You watch it on television, and you see the pitch coming into home plate, and there's a giant commercial right behind home plate for something or the other. And it really distracts. That's why I'm much more of a fan of minor league baseball. And,
Right,
and even kids playing baseball. Maybe they don't play as well, but they're playing for the fun of it, and you don't have to get stuck with all these commercials.
The commercials, and let's face it, you go to a ball game, between the outfield wall, which is peppered with signage, and in between innings, see, baseball is a thinking man's game. I like to think along, but they play the music so damn loud that whether you're at a basketball game, a hockey game, or a baseball game, and I'm a sports guy, so I see this, they don't allow the person to think along. It's like they control every aspect of your, and we had a show once on this, and I talked about it. It's horrible.
Don't they just feel an obligation or something? They feel an obligation to fill every second with entertainment, rather than having a little break a little intermission here and there for you to stop and digest what you've seen. Chat with the person around you. When I go to Yankee Stadium, I like to sit out in the bleachers because, and I always have, going back to the 1960s, I'd rather be in the bleachers than behind home plate, because in the bleachers you've got people that are more knowledgeable about baseball than the folks behind home plate.
Absolutely.
They paid $100 or $200 for a seat. The folks that paid $5, $10, well, it used to be a couple dollars, but $5, $10, $15, $20 now, which is an affordable ticket in today's modern sports world. Those are the people that you can actually have a conversation with about the sport, and they're just so much more fun to talk to.
Absolutely, I agree. So we might, there's shows like that you can always have. And then people will call in and say, Chris, I never thought about that. But you're right. Sometimes I'm at a game and I'm surrounded by noise and advertisements, and it's like I can't, even going to the game, I can't get away from it. The best thing in sports used to be listening to a baseball game on the radio. It no longer is, because every pitch is sponsored. This 15th pitch of the game was brought to you by Budweiser, and the 50th at bat of the game. And it's amazing. I heard, I'm a Met guy, and I heard in the middle of a big rally in September.
The Pepsi-Cola 7th inning stretch.
Yeah, and during an actual call of a 2-run single in a game, Howie Rose had to do a reader during the play. And it's like, he's old school. He's old school.
But having to follow the rules.
It's ridiculous. So that might come up in a public access show that they're ever going to talk about in commercial television. That's what the key.
Tell me about some of the shows that you've enjoyed most in this 6 years, or at least in the 3.5 years, 3 years that you've been on your own. We spoke at length about the yoga instructors that came on the show just before we came on the air. Who have you had on that's been a lot of fun? People that have surprised you.
Well, the first guy I had on that he didn't really surprise me. He was exactly what he was advertised. Was former NBA referee Ronnie Nunn, who's a friend of mine. And here's a guy who's called fouls on Charles Barkley and Michael Jordan, and he talked about his ascension. Now, the guy used to be a principal. He went from a teacher to a gym coach to a principal, and he was a basketball player in college. Tried out for the Knicks, by the way. And he said, they're like, well, have you ever thought about refereeing? He picked this up in his 30s, and the guy had a 20-year career. Now, see, that's cool. I thought that was fantastic.
That's amazing, to be running around as much as the referees do, because they run around as much as the players do.
Absolutely.
And they actually have to have their head about themselves every minute of every game. They're not getting any timeouts or any breaks on the bench.
Exactly.
So
Ronnie,
so they've got to run around.
I did a show on a Messianic synagogue in West Haven. Rabbi Eaton came in. These are Jewish believers in Christ. And he has a whole group of people. And I had him in, and we had a frank discussion for an hour of how he's built his parish, so to say, and how he's converted people, Jewish people, to Jesus Christ. That was a great show. We had him on last year. I've had on Karen Udis, who's a former attorney for the IMF. The World Bank.
Oh, okay.
World Bank.
Everybody's favorites.
Yeah, exactly. But she had to
another
leave because she saw all the corruption.
We were talking a little bit before we came on about liberals and libertarians and things that they agree upon, and that's another thing that they pretty much agree upon is that the Federal Reserve is neither neither federal nor a reserve.
Oh, and if you know what? Here's the thing. We've had a show on that too. You know, people go through high school. I remember when they mentioned the Federal Reserve, they mentioned it once in social studies when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And they just glossed over how the Federal Reserve Act was signed, how it was put through Congress on Christmas Eve when only 5 people were there, and they had Woodrow Wilson sign it, one of the worst presidents we've ever had.
Yeah.
Now, why is that important? Because money is a part of our everyday life, and people don't even realize that the Federal Reserve are essentially not from this country. They are independent bankers. Their only interest in running central banks in countries is to make money off the government of those countries. And so we've had conversations with Karen Udis from the World Bank on that. And people are like, well, what do you mean? The Federal Reserve, I thought that was the federal government. No, they word these things in such a way that we never question it. So that was a great show.
They spent a lot of time coming up with very, very attractive looking names. And everybody who watches shows knows that I have a Saturday morning therapy group up at Panera Bread in Brookfield. And a couple of our folks are from New Milford. And there was a company trying to do a gas-to-energy plant in New Milford. And what did they call that plant? They called it Panda. Now, who could ever be against anything with the name Panda attached to it?
They're cute.
Exactly. Cuddly, lovable. But these guys were anything but cuddly and lovable. They were trying to do some stuff that probably was, well, the people in New Milford didn't think it was in their best interest, and they as a town voted them down and said no, we don't want those cute, cuddly pandas.
Right.
In our town.
But a lot of people play word games, so this is an opportunity to have shows and to talk to people. And I remember some of the people like, what do you mean the Federal Reserve isn't are part of our government? And then they find out that the people who stand behind the Federal Reserve are the same people that stand behind the Bank of Chile, the Bank of Venezuela, the Bank of China. These are all the same 5 families, and you know what their mantra is? Competition is sin. Now, they might not all like one another, but they decided a long time ago that they were going to band together, and I never think that's a good thing, but I'll leave that up to the viewer. But they were going to band together to offer no competition, and it's either our way or the highway. That's essentially what they do. Well,
What they do is they take our money, our taxpayer money, at 0%, and turn around and lend it back to us at maybe it's a nominal 2%, but that's 2% for doing nothing.
Yeah, and they can. Let's face it.
Shuffling papers.
The Federal Reserve note. All they need is a printer. There's no silver or gold attached to it. It doesn't. They make money up, and then they charge us for it. What a business.
Explain why there used to be gold behind paper money.
Well, so the paper, because it was inflation proof and your dollar would always have strength. I'll give you an example. In the 104 years of the Federal Reserve, the dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power, and I'll give you an example. If you bought a quart of milk in 1913, it probably was 4 or 5 cents. Right now, it's probably $1.70. The court hasn't changed. It's the strength of the fiat dollar that through inflation has become rendered useless. So what they did, and I think Kennedy, this has been one of the reasons why I think Kennedy was shot, he was talking about putting us back on...
A lot of groups hated Kennedy and wanted him dead.
Right, but I tell you right now, I know that
CIA,
he wanted to get us out of the Federal Reserve note and get us into the gold standard, at least expand it away from the Federal Reserve. And I'll always say the worst thing that Richard Nixon did was not Watergate, was taking us off the gold reserve in 71. Because by 74 we had massive inflation, and we've never turned back.
Absolutely. And speaking of presidents, we had a discussion before we went on the air about our favorite presidents, and found that both of us think Teddy Roosevelt and Dwight Eisenhower were both excellent presidents. But a fellow by the name of Lincoln, when he was faced with a revolution in America, how many?
2 minutes we got.
Okay. The banks were right there. They wanted to finance the Union Army. They wanted to finance the war at a nominal, let's say 12, 13%. Lincoln got around that and had our government print its own money. So we were using our money printed by our government to fight our war rather than, and I know it's become kind of a trite term, bankster, but because it's an equivalent of...
What happened to Lincoln? What was put in his brain? A bullet.
Well, that was after
Kennedy's,
the war was over.
Oh, but here, my point, he was a marked man. When you make decisions to stay away from fiat currency and run your own finances, that's the easiest way for an assassination. It happened to Lincoln. It happened to Kennedy. And I'm afraid, while I voted for Donald Trump, I feel like they're going to do something like that to him, because he at least wants to restore independence, whether you agree with him or not.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to last 4 years. I think the Republicans will get rid of him before then, after the 2018 bloodbath that seems like it's around the corner. But at any rate, so we're going to have to break it off there. One more quick anecdote. One more quick anecdote about a show you've done that you enjoyed.
A friend from 6th grade, Matt Glazer, organized a lacrosse team that went to Israel as an outreach from this country. Went over there, has been going over there for 5 years, and has given the game of lacrosse to the youth of Israel.
Excellent. And with that, it's been Progressive Soup. Chris Pante, of the Chris Pante Show. What nights are your shows on?
Tuesday night, 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Live.
And we're taping right after him tonight. But at any rate, enjoy your evening, and we'll see you tomorrow, noon 30, with the same show, because we're only doing one show today. So there you go. If you want to watch it again, turn the TV on to Comcast, channel 23, tomorrow, Thursday, noon 30. And we'll see you again with a real show, well, a real new show, next Wednesday, 9:30. Thanks for joining us.